Knock, knock, Chris.
Who's there, Anthony?
Europe.
Europe who?
No, Europe who. All right, that was really stupid, but
we're starting the episode on maybe the lowest note of all time. I have a good dad joke queued up, and I think I'm going to keep it in my hip pocket because I don't know that our audience really can survive more than one terrible joke per episode. And so
that's fair. And you don't have a hip pocket, you have a fanny pack, be honest.
Oh, Anthony,
Kick
one
us
of
off,
the
Chris.
very strategies that built your business are now the ones destroying it. According to Harvard Business Review, 70% of businesses that reach 1 million in revenue fail to reach 10 million, with operational bottlenecks being the number one cause of this plateau. Most founders assume more of what worked will keep working, but that's exactly backwards. Howard Schultz, the visionary behind Starbucks, once admitted his biggest mistakes were trying to personally approve every new store location when the company had over 1,000 stores. I was the bottleneck, he confessed in a rare moment of vulnerability. My need to control everything was killing the thing I loved the most. Today, Anthony, on How to Founder, we're talking about operational scaling and what got you here won't get you there. Which is, where is here? I don't even know. I'm Chris Franks. With me today is Anthony Franco. Anthony, how are you? Terrible dad joke, but I laughed. I thought it was good.
Yeah, that's the whole point of a dad joke. It's like you laugh at the teller, not with the teller.
There's plenty of people that laugh at us, Anthony.
Yes.
It's plenty of people that laugh directly at us. We're lucky
Chris,
today,
let me ask you a question.
Yes, please.
Who do we have on the show today?
Thank you for the segue. We are fortunate enough to have Derek Fredrickson. He's the founder and CEO of the COO Solution, a fractional COO agency helping 6- and 7-figure business owners streamline operations, build high-performing teams, and scale sustainably without burning out. With over 16 years as a second-in-command and COO, Derek empowers entrepreneurs to reclaim their time and focus on what they love while achieving measurable growth. Derek, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. After that dad joke, I was really happy to look down and see you hadn't already left. I was just glad you're still here.
Thank you. I actually really thank you. And I really appreciate, I've never heard it this way, which is like the dad joke. It's not the joke that's ever funny. It's the person who's telling the joke that is the one that's the laugh. So I'm going to have to save that one because with 3 kids, I'm often, pulling out some dad jokes here and there, and they have a similar response, which is usually cricket. I'm cracking up on my own.
Also, I mean, maybe we pivot the whole episode. We just talk about dad jokes, but really, I'm the one who thinks the joke's the funniest when I tell the joke. And I'm the one who cracks up laughing. My kids are like, that's why I love it. All right, Derek, most founders think operational scaling means doing more of what's working. Why can that be dangerous? I did this. It got me to this amount of sales. I just need to keep doing that thing, and it's going to lead me to ultimate success. True, not true? Is that dangerous?
True. I would say not true. Definitely dangerous, but figure-outable, solvable. And I loved the analogy. I can't see the visual, but as you said, what got you here is not going to get you there. And I think especially for founders, for CEOs, for visionaries that are looking to scale or continue to scale, especially if they've reached that 7-figure mark, I think the struggle and the real challenge for them is they actually need to do less better. And that means it doesn't mean you could go and take a vacation or you can go take a nap or do research more dad jokes or whatever it might be. But at a certain point, there's the element of they need more time for thinking and less time for doing. And in the beginning, what got them there, they were doing everything, right? They were bootstrapping, they were hustling, they were doing all the things in the business that needed to be done. And yeah, maybe they had some team members that would help, doing the operations, doing the social media, doing the marketing, doing the sales, maybe even, God forbid, doing the bookkeeping, or doing their own website. But at a certain point, if you're looking to scale, you got to get out of your own way as a founder, as a CEO, as a visionary. Let the team, let the process, let the structure get you to where you want to go. And that freedom allows you to be more in that visionary box, which is actually what started your business and your passion and got you to that point of 7 figures to begin with. So it allows you to kind of step back into what you were originally excited about and think about the bigger future, the bigger vision, and then provide that kind of structure around you with the right people, the right processes, the right systems and frameworks that allow the organization, not just you as the individual, do really, really good work. That's how you scale. And it's that awareness that you're often your own bottleneck in your company.
It's in the story about Howard Schultz is a perfect example. Obviously, a huge scale-up company, but Anthony, this is a classic founder problem. We are the people, the energy, the drive, the enthusiasm, the ability to deal with chaos that gets the ball rolling, gets the flywheel moving, whatever the analogy you want to use. However, oftentimes we're the ones that sit in the way of us growing. And I tell this story about CleverFunnel. I'm absolutely the reason why we reached a particular level in sales. I was also the reason we didn't grow beyond that. I was breaking stuff. I mean, Anthony, you've seen it 100 times, right?
Actually, I did an analysis of, so we're on episode 107. So wow. About 100 episodes ago, about 7 episodes ago, I did an analysis of all 100 and pulled like the nuggets from all the things and the things that we heard quite a bit.
Wait, we said something smart?
No. Our guests did. Our guests.
Oh,
did.
yes. Okay, good. Good.
But one of the, so I came up with like 40 uncomfortable truths about owning a business, and the one that stuck out at me, things that we heard over and over again, was the way I phrased it, but it was the same sentiment, is either you own the business or the business owns you.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're saying, Derek, essentially is, and I'm hearing EOS traction-y kind of thing, so I know we're going to talk about that, but yeah. I hear that you need to develop the systems so that the business doesn't own you. Yeah.
The thing is, yes, and in most cases, entrepreneurs aren't wired to develop systems. They don't think in a systems-oriented mindset. They like the idea of systems. They like the idea of operations. They want their business to run like a well-oiled machine, but they are not wired to be the ones to create those frameworks, right? Because again, they'd rather be focusing on the big idea. They focus on culture. They focus on relationships.
We focus on breaking systems.
Yeah, breaking systems. But, and they're not sexy. Entrepreneurs are not jumping out of bed and be like, I wish I had more systems in my business. I wish I had more structure. It's almost kind of like the opposite. Like structure is like, no, I avoid that at all costs. But,
absolutely true.
Without that type of structure and without those types of systems in place, I'm not talking about technical systems. I'm just talking about systematic way of doing things, right? Don't reinvent the wheel, having it be like, just a well-oiled machine. And when they realize that they're not the ones to create the system, but they're the ones that can leverage and use the system to scale, that's where the real magic happens, because they're not wired in a systematic way, right? They're wired to like create new things. I love to start things. I don't necessarily love to finish things. I don't really feel or want to focus on all the different dots that need to be connected. I don't think in an A to Z way, but there are people, process-minded, system-minded individuals that love to think and breathe and live in an A to Z framework, systems-minded way. And that's where that kind of magic, kind of happens in order to create that structure. Because if you've got a 7-figure business and you're looking to scale, and as a founder, and it feels complex and it feels like struggle and it feels like I'm not in my zone of genius and I'm kind of maybe going against the tide a little bit, like you need to find a different way.
True story, Derek. So we had a meeting, Anthony and I and our new third co-host, Stephanie, and we said, hey, Anthony, you've been doing everything. You just sort of created this entire process from scratch. He's like, just talk us through it. And after about a minute or two, I go, I have a headache. I can't even follow you anymore about this process. It's like, could you please write it down so I can use that as a cure for when I can't sleep at night. Like this entire process.
And to Chris's, to your point, Derek, I was like, I don't want to write it down. I'd rather do it than document it.
Yeah.
All right. So we as founders, we know that there's a danger here, which is the thing that kind of gets that energy, that passion, and liking to break systems and liking to look at, what we call first principles, really boiling down problems, not relying on conventional wisdom. But we also need to be process thinkers. When, Derek? When do we start to bring this in? Do we bring it in as like week one of a new company? Is it year one? When do we need to start thinking about the processes that will run our business?
Yeah, I think great question. I think it can happen at all stages, right? For those that are just starting out, you're a solopreneur, you're kind of doing everything. And I mean, if you're doing everything, one of the first steps you could take is, and I know it sounds simple, but usually it's in the simplicity where there's big breakthrough, right? Big insight. Where is your time going? Where are you spending your time on a given day, on a given week? And what are the activities that feel, not think, but feel like they're draining your energy? And when I say feel instead of think, because we're going to push through it, even though I there's got to be a better way, but I've got so much on my busy to-do list. I'm just going to get it done. So you're just going to get it done and get it done and get it done. And that's that determination. That's kind of like that achiever in us in order to push through. But if you kind of take a step back and look and say, okay, where am I showing up every day? And the things that are involving my time, energy, and effort, where is it draining my energy? And if we're being really honest with ourselves, where is it that I could probably find another solution that could make it even better? When I mean a solution, that could either be a person, or it could be a process, or it could be a combination of both. And oftentimes we default, well, let me just come up with the process. Let me come up with the way, if I'm managing my calendar, I'm doing my social media, and I'm spending all this time every single week. Again, being careful that entrepreneurs aren't normally wired to think in a systematic way. But if there's something that they could do to say, well, I'm doing this week in and week out, and I could just come up with a more systematic way, a checklist, leveraging a project management tool or something, great. But oftentimes it starts with the person to come in and say, here's what I'm doing. I'm doing it all on my own. I need some help either in the execution or the implementation or the tactics, or just something that I can pass on to you and say, can you just take this off my plate? And when we start to get that time back, even if it's just a couple hours in a week, it starts to cascade, and you can see, well, where else can I start to delegate or outsource or streamline? And that starts to not only kind of get your time back quantifiably, but energetically, it makes them feel a bit more empowered, because they're not doing the stuff that they know they're not supposed to be doing, that somebody could be doing better. And then they can reinvest that time into something that's a little bit more empowering, thinking about the next big strategy or another program or another partner that they could reach out. That's where a founder, if we look at a business and the assets that are in a business, the founder is an asset. And when you can return on investment that asset, just like you would any other asset in the business, and realize that that's the thing that's going to move the needle, they kind of get a bit more empowered and excited, and they want to do more of it. So it's starting anywhere, really.
Anthony, one of the kind of pieces of some advice I got early on, which I thought was really smart, and I've tried to use ever since, is create a job title for yourself when you're doing a particular job, and start to list the functions of that job, and maybe even assign a day for that job. So like Monday, you're the marketing and salesperson, and Tuesday, and kind of go through that. But have you used that, Anthony, where you started to say, if our job as a founder is to replace ourselves with all the different jobs we have, sometimes you were talking a little bit about EOS. One of the things in go through an EOS implementation, entrepreneurial operating system, the book Traction, Gino Wickman, is what we call EOS. EOS asks us to define the jobs, even if we're still sitting in that seat. Have you done that, Anthony?
I have an allergy to process. So you're asking me to develop a process so that I can follow a process.
Derek, when can you start with Anthony? When's your first day?
This is great, but here's the thing. This is what I think is the struggle. This is the rub, right? So what Anthony just said is the shift. It's a mindset shift, because most entrepreneurs are going to have to believe that they are the one to create the system, even though they're not wired for it. It's not their strength. It's not. Yep. It's going to feel like it's going against the grain. Right. And if you take somebody who lives and breathes in systems and says, Go and create a business plan. Go to a industry conference and network with your top 20, partners that can help scale your business. Focus more on culture and emotion and big sales and big delivery. They're like, no. I just want to dot the I's and cross the T's and create the system and have it run like clockwork, right? So there's that marriage between the two, but most founders get stuck and be like, okay, I have to come up with the system. I have to, and I'm not minded in a systematic way. So they kind of beat themselves up, and then they kind of avoid, or they kind of drag their feet and they kind of self-sabotage, and then they create something that's like kind of a system, like it's kind of in my head. I have it in a notepad that's on my phone, or maybe I wrote it down, and somebody comes in and like, so what's your sales process? And they're like, I just pick up the phone and talk to people and sell. They're like, no.
I look at the forecast next month, decide that we need sales, so I make some phone calls.
Yeah. Exactly.
So this is exactly right. Like this is. How many times in my career have I looked at and said, I need to create a system so that this scales? Mm-hmm. And not until I bring somebody on that knows how to do that does anything actually get done.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I think that was going to be my next question anyway, Derek, is it's for us as founders and the people, kind of the visionary mindset of people, if we're staying with the EOS themes. In EOS, there's two roles that run companies, the visionary, and then there's the integrator. And the integrator is the classic COO type. Mm-hmm. When do I need to start thinking about having this person? Ideally, you want them as a business partner, but if you don't have them, you're going to need some help. When do you recommend that we as founders start investing in finding some help?
Yeah, I would say for following the EOS model, and we use EOS. I've been using EOS for over 10 years. I love it. I think it's a game changer for businesses. And I would say that visionary integrator relationship is key for so many different levels. It's the same as a CEO and COO, or I would say that second in command, because the second in command is basically the one that is your trusted partner and operator to run your business for you, or in some cases with you. And I say we run your business for you. That doesn't mean we take control of your business. We actually give you control back. So you're not in all of the day-to-day and the weeds and all the stuff that doesn't light you up. But it's that partnership. It's that same pageness that exists in the EOS model with the visionary and the integrator. And often what I would say is having a trusted second in command. Because if you're going to give the keys to the kingdom and they're going to have the oversight of everything in your business, and I mean everything. They are like your air traffic controller. So they are not just looking at marketing. They are not just looking at finance. They are looking at marketing, sales, operations, finance. And then I always say there's a team component, and then there's a technology component, meaning what are we leveraging in terms of AI and automation and streamlining things from a technology perspective. And so when you have that trusted second in command, there is that partnership because they're able to think strategically with you. They're able to kind of ideate what is the next big vision. But then their step comes in and says, great, now let me go make that happen for you. I often say entrepreneurs, founders, their job is to make it up. Our job as COOs, our job is to make it real. We make it happen. And then with the right process and people, we make it recur. But oftentimes you've got a founder who's like, here's the idea. I'm winging it. I want to improvise. I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall with this other, venture I want to launch. And then the team members are like, okay, so what do I do as the first step? Can you break it down for me in terms of like, what's my task? And how do I do that? And they're like, oh, that's too much detail. I just, there's a drive-by delegation. And then, those things don't get fully implemented. When you have, I always say the bridge, the person in the middle that helps make it happen, helps make it real, but with the trust and the faith and the confidence that they're going to do it and do it completely because they have the wherewithal of a systems mindset to work with the team, but also they think strategically as that thought partner to really kind of help that. It gives the founder a lot of confidence so they can come up with more ideas and come up with the next bigger vision, knowing that it's not going to die on the vine, but it's actually going to get implemented and cascaded all the way down into a process or a systematic way of growing and scaling the business. You can't scale complexity, but you can scale simplicity. And when you have a simple structure of how to get ideas implemented and get things done, that's when you get traction. That's when you get momentum. That's when you get a lot of forward growth.
There's a ton of stuff to unpack from, that last few statements, which the first one is, Anthony, we oftentimes beat ourselves up as founders because we are visionary and we want to go on to the next thing. There's a whole world of people out there that are integrators, that want to help, that want to just be there to help be the person that executes. And even just understanding that was a revelation for me, that there are a group of people that really love making order from chaos and don't mind when I come in and create chaos. It was, for me, it was a moment of like calm, where I realized I didn't have to go do something that I didn't really like to do. And I enjoy creating systems. I just would rather somebody else run those systems. Anthony, has that been your experience too?
Yeah. So two quick things. I used to feel guilty for not being good at this. There was shame because I was like, I should, right? I would should myself into like trying to figure this out. And then I read this little book called Strengths Finder that changed my life. Like it's the single most impactful book of my life. And it's a simple book. It's not complicated. It takes maybe an hour to read the main parts and then you take a test. But what it basically gave me permission to do is say, I'm not good at that, but I'm good at this. So could you help? I allow myself now to go find somebody to pick up the places that I'm not good at, therefore I don't want to do, that feel like work to me and feel like fun to other people. The second thing I will say, the thing that if you are a visionary type, and can't afford yet or can't bring on an operator or an integrator, Derek, I'd love you to expand on this list. But the one thing that has helped me kind of bridge that gap is the scorecard. So figure out the 5, 10 at the most things that you need to measure your company on a weekly basis and measure those. That scorecard essentially in and of itself is a system.
It exactly is.
And so so once I recognize the fact that I need a scorecard, that's easy to implement. You don't need necessarily a full-time integrator to do that. Just develop take a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet, weeks across the top, KPIs across the side, and every week just measure your progress on it. And just the act of measuring it will help you move the needles on what matters. Derek, I'd love you to add to that list of things that you can do as a visionary to start to build systems that are lightweight but also impactful.
Yeah. And I love that. And second to the Strengths Finder, the game changer, I think, the whole operating from your strengths idea of that book is the same thing. I mean, I did that 15 years ago. That and the Colby assessment, knowing how you're wired to take action, complete game changer. I think two things in that regard. One is going back to what you mentioned earlier, like if you're scaling, you may not have the wherewithal to bring on a full-time, fractional COO, a full-time operator, full-time integrator. That's why, they're a fractional, right? We do this with clients where, 20, 40 hours a month. It doesn't have to be, several days a week, especially if you're scaling and you're at that, seven-figure level. But then also if you're at that stage, you may not have the ability, if you're looking at the accountability chart, right, as an EOS term, an organizational chart, and you're the founder, you're the CEO, you're at the top, but you also have an ownership, you have a responsibility to other functions. You may be still doing some of the marketing, you may be still doing some of the sales, you might be doing some of the delivery. That's fine, but put yourself in the seat. So if that's the seat and there are responsibilities in that seat, you can't just kind of advocate that and say, well, I'm not going to do marketing because that's not my thing. But if there's nobody else who's owning marketing, guess what? You have to own marketing, right? Otherwise, who's going to do the marketing? And you might have somebody that helps with building your website or doing funnels or lead gen or ads or whatever. That's great, but they're not going to own it. Somebody has to own marketing. And I always say marketing because marketing is the driver. Marketing drives sales, which drives operations, which is just the delivery of what you just sold. And the good output of marketing, sales, operations is finance. And that obviously reinvests back in. So looking at your accountability chart as a system and understanding where are there the right seats that are needed. And if I don't have the right people, you are, as the founder, the right person for now, but knowing that can evolve and scale as you expand. The scorecard thing, I love. I mean, I'm an analytical guy. I love numbers, but when I sometimes talk to entrepreneurs, they're like, numbers, schmumbers. I talk to my bookkeeper every 6 months. I don't really know what's going on. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. If you want to scale, you have to know what's going on. And the best way to identify that are KPIs. And you don't have to be deep into analytics. I'm not talking about spreadsheets and graphs and charts and everything else, but just identify, take a step back, forget about what structure it is. I don't care if it's a spreadsheet, if it's on a notepad, whatever it is, even if on a piece of paper on your desk. What are the drivers? Like, how do you make sales? Okay, you make sales from leads. How do you generate leads? Okay, you generate leads from ads. How are your campaigns performing? Get the facts, put them down pen to paper, and what you track grows. So the more you look at that, the more you kind of focus on it and give it attention and energy. And when you see, great, this is what's working, do more of that. This is what's not working, do less of that or change it so it gets into being a better thing than a worse thing. So it's really just getting the clarity, but you don't have to create these huge, overwhelming spreadsheets and charts and everything else. I usually like, just take the first couple of numbers that matter, but make it a practice, make it a system where every Monday you're looking, how did I do with my marketing last week? How many leads, how many sales, how much revenue, how much profit, how many proposals got sent out? Whatever it might be for your business, just start somewhere with some basic numbers and then you can build from there. There's no such thing as scorecard nirvana. It's always going to evolve, as you scale.
There's also, and I'll add one thing to that, Chris. There is something also about looking at a flat line on a scorecard that spurs action. Mm-hmm. So if you're not improving in an area and it's just the same number every week, there's something that goes, what are we doing about this? Like if you're measuring it every week, you're like, all right, so we know we need to do 10 demos a week, but we're only doing 3, and we've been doing 3 for the last 3 months. What
are we doing about that?
What are we doing about that? And
who owns that? Who owns that?
And it almost shames the team looking, or just yourself, and you're going, all right, I got to do something about this because I hate putting the number 3 in every week. No, like I'm feeling guilty about putting 3 in every week. So, Chris, what do you got?
I want to recap for just a minute because we've covered a lot of ground, but there's really good stuff here. Number one is realizing as a founder, you're not always necessarily the person that's going to be the best operator, at least at first. It's something you can learn. You can find help finding people like you, Derek. Number two is writing down and using that, what in EOS they call the accountability chart, but what seats you're actually sitting in, what are your responsibilities, trying to document the processes that you're going through, even if it's painful, Anthony, along the way. And then, using a scorecard then to measure your success. I think those are really good tactics. But Derek, what else? What else can we do as founders to start this process? And obviously, we want to have somebody that comes in that's going to help balance us. But what are some of those other operational discipline components that we can use?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is what we call a culture of accountability. Having somebody that is that second in command integrator, fractional COO, that can lead, manage, and hold accountable your people, your processes, your projects, your plans. And when I say hold accountable, this isn't about micromanaging. This isn't about babysitting. If you have team, right? So you have team members, and usually sometimes when founders are scaling, they feel like, oftentimes they'll say, I'm drowning in the day-to-day. I'm kind of like in a firefighting whack-a-mole. I'm getting bogged down with these issues with team members. And those are sometimes legitimate issues, but somebody needs to provide the oversight and the structure of holding that accountable. And again, but that's not babysitting. That's not, did you check and do this? Did you do that? No. This is everybody kind of elevating up what they're doing, but also how they're doing it. And that comes from a level of accountability. When we work with clients and companies and founders, we're focused just as much on what we're doing in addition to how we're doing it. Because the how is when you're leveraging your people and your plans and your processes and everything else in order to scale, and kind of creating that culture of accountability so that the team members feel empowered on what they need to do, when they need to do it by, how they need to do it. And then also, I sometimes say a loving culture of accountability to the founder, holding them accountable to the things that need to be done from their perspective, because maybe they're still in the marketing seat or they're still in the sales seat. And if sales are down, you can't point the finger to somebody else. Who owns sales? Okay, Anthony owns sales. Why are we down? And come up with some solutions to strategize. But then knowing that when there's things that then happen to be implemented, Anthony doesn't feel deflated because he has to go figure that all on his own. He's got somebody like, great, let me go do the research. Let me go get the facts. Let me come up with some solutions. Let's brainstorm together and come up with some systematic ways to improve, as an example, what we're doing in sales, or maybe what's not working in marketing. It's this culture of accountability that just holds everybody more responsible and implies this ownership, which is really, really empowering, especially as you're scaling with team, because that is how you scale. You can't, obviously, as we're talking, you can't do it on your own. But when you've got those people in the right seats, making sure that they're being held accountable so that they're kind of elevating, meaning they're doing things at a higher level, and kind of they're more efficient in how they're doing it so they can get things done more quickly. And
Derek, I have one more question. I have one more question for you.
We gotta go fast, Anthony.
Yeah, just give me the qualities of when you're looking for a good operator, an integrator. What am I looking for? Like, how do I evaluate somebody that they're going to be good at this?
Great question. Number one, a couple of things. I would say first and foremost, they've got the experience and the skill set. So they've done this before. At this level, when they're coming in and running a 7-figure business, this is not something that they just start to kind of fall into circumstance. They've been doing this with a track record, and they have that expertise and that experience. Number two, they crave being the number two. They don't have a strong desire for the spotlight. They don't crave a lot of those activities that a visionary typically has. They are likely to be more reserved and backstage, right? So they're kind of running the show without being the star of the show. You already have a star of the show. That's the founder. You don't need another co-star, if you will. So they crave that kind of number two spot. Number three, assessments, Strengths Finder, Colby, making sure that they're wired to finish things. They're wired in strengths that are built on the theme of executing, right? Not so much in the theme of influencing. Influencing is great for sales and kind of, coming up with ideas and everything else. But I want somebody to like get stuff done, right? We are the finishers to founders starting ideas. And number four for us at our company, it's based on trust. Making sure that it's somebody that we feel that when they're working with the client, that the client feels that they can trust them, that they can rely on them. They are that second in command. I remember I worked with the client once, and for a couple of years, we had this running joke that I was referred to him as his consigliere, right? From The Godfather, right? I wasn't in the family, but I was the one that made a lot of the decisions, and it was the one that he consulted with the most. It's that type of trusted partnership because you are letting them run your business with you, or in some cases for you. So those are a few things that we definitely take into consideration.
All right, Derek, are you ready for this speed round? On the graphic. I'm nailing the graphic, Anthony. I
love that.
Don't double click, just click. All right. Speed round. Centralized control or distributed decision making, which prevents more scaling disasters?
You're asking me.
Yeah. This
Yes.
is you.
Centralized control.
All right. Documented process or flexible adaptation, which creates more operational efficiency?
Documenting processes.
Hire specialists or train generalists, which builds stronger scaling foundations?
Hire specialists.
Gradual system implementation or complete operational overhaul, which minimizes risk?
That depends. What was the first one?
That's a good one. Gradual implementation.
Gradual implementation.
Yeah. I like it. Anthony, what did you learn today?
I'll keep these short. So the fundamentals: do less, better. Delegate, which does not add value. You, as the founder, are not the best one to create the process or system. Value the visionary integrator partnership, and build a scorecard you can track every week.
Deep dive recommendations, a lot of usual suspects. We've already talked about Traction by Gino Wickman, Good to Great by Jim Collins, The Founder's Dilemma, which is an article in the Harvard Business Review by Noam Wasserman, and Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. Really good books. Derek, where do we find you? Where do we find the COO solution? Anthony, that's your cue.
You guys are great. I love your dynamic, the two of you. Yeah, you can.
We have a dynamic.
You can find us online at thecoosolution.com. And if you're thinking maybe you're a founder and wondering if maybe now's the right time to think about bringing on a fractional COO, there's a quiz there that you can take that really helps you understand, based on where you are, where you're going, where you are the bottleneck across the business. And yeah, we can check that out on the website.
I think it's great. The other one, part of the EOS universe now, is a book called Rocket Fuel, which talks about the integrator and the role. And Derek, the integrator is actually more rare statistically than
it is.
visionary.
Yeah, a good integrator. Yeah, very, very difficult to find.
Can I correct one quick story? Oh, sorry, I know you guys have.
Yeah, no, go for it. Go for it.
I'll give a quick story about that, which still resonates for me to this day. I remember I was in a mastermind years ago, and we were at a dinner with a bunch of entrepreneurs, visionaries, and everything else. And they said they were talking about the fact that they're all visionaries, and there's only one of Derek. And he said that the difference is, if there wasn't people like Derek, all of these ideas that we all talked about at the dinner table, they all sit on the dinner table and we all left to go leave the restaurant. But the good thing with people like Derek is he's going to take those ideas and make them happen. So we're rare, but we're a special breed.
Also, one of the things I like most about a good integrator is when Anthony comes in with a terrible idea, they just go, no. We're not going to do that.
And I'm like, thank you for not letting me go down that rabbit
and he's
hole.
mad for about 4 seconds. And he's like, okay, actually, that's
all right. Thank you all so much for listening. Please be sure to visit us at howtofounder.com, where you can connect with us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify channels. You are the pioneer of economic prosperity. We are grateful for being there with you along the way. Thanks, everybody.